Good afternoon, or good morning, good evening, depending on where you are, where you're joining us from. My name is Matthew Stibber, and I'm presenting today's webinar about how to become a thought leader in the world of health tech, health, life sciences. I'm bemused because I I presented this yesterday, and I was told by one of my colleagues that I also needed to do it today. So if you're joining today, thank you very much. If you joined yesterday, it's nice to see you again. There is no chat on this, but this is going out live. If you have any questions, I'd love to hear from you. My email address is matthew@articulatemarketing.com. You can email me anytime. Some of you may know we like to use these classic paintings for our presentations and for our website. The obvious one here would have been Rembrandt's anatomy lesson of Dr. Nicholas Tulp, but it's a bit gory for 5 p.m. on Thursday, so here's a nice owl instead. Now, everyone's sort of piling in the door. I'll get started. We'll be about 25-30 minutes on this. Couple of brief parish notices. If you haven't been to one of my webinars before, this is where I'm coming from. I run Articulate Marketing. We have done 130 branding projects, written 2.5, probably more like 3 million words of content over 25 years, produced more than 115 websites and more than 150 HubSpot projects. We really like the health sector, life sciences sector. We've worked with clients like Health Hero, Doctor Care Anywhere, Begu Consulting, Pharmaciege, Linus Health. It's one of our areas of expertise. If you would like to learn more about today's topic, we have a lot of content on the website, a lot of information about thought leadership copywriting in general. Today's webinar is based on this research and report done by my brilliant colleague, Madeline Saunders, Mads. You can download the report, and we'll also send out a follow-up email to anyone who attends with a link to this. This report has more details about the work that Mads did and the analysis that we've done. That's the basis of today's presentation. We looked at nearly 500 health tech and life sciences websites to see what they were doing to manifest thought leadership. So this is where we're coming from today. If you would like me, or Mads, or both of us, to look at your thought leadership content and give you a free no BS review, no hard sell, just talking to marketing professionals, I would be delighted to arrange that. You can book that at articulatemarketing.com/meet. If you're attending, listening, watching this after the event, no doubt it's an area of curiosity and interest. We would love to have a chat. I'm sure we can bring some value to that conversation. Last parish notice before we get stuck in. We have done over the last 6 months a whole bunch of webinars that really relate to this topic of thought leadership, not least last week's webinar about thought leadership in general in 2026. And you can find all of these webinars pre-recorded on articulatemarketing.com/webinars. Have a look at our blog as well. There's lots of content about thought leadership on a meta level, ironically. Okay, so what are we going to be talking about today? We looked at all of these websites, identified for the purposes of this webinar 5 companies, organizations that really excelled. What are they doing? And perhaps talking a little bit about unpacking that. What can you do to emulate the leaders of the pack? The report has more details, but we're going to start with these 5. Everly Well, Sleep Doctor, Nourish, Greenlight Guru, and Let's Get Checked. There are more in the report. All of them involved experts. They had actual knowledge, expertise, experience that they were manifesting. At least 4 out of 5 of those identified those experts by name, so that you could see who they were and sort of check their credentials. The content was not written for the New England Journal of Medicine or the Lancet. They were not scientific pieces. Some of them were written for consumers and general readership. Some of them were written for B2B marketing purposes, but they were written with credibility in mind. They linked to scientific research reports and other kinds of references. and this is good practice for thought leadership generally. Show your working, show the basis of your thinking, and where you're producing expertise, insights of your own, and this is also thought leadership, it's worth saying, we did this, and here is the basis of our research, as you will find in our report. If you download it, we'll tell you where we got the data and how we analysed it. These 5, and indeed the top performers across the whole report, had built very large numbers of backlinks. So not only were they manifesting credibility, expertise and authority, but they were receiving it by being linked to by other parties. 3 out of these 5 had more than 10,000 backlinks. Now, if you ever get involved in the world of SEO, you'll know that that's a big number. You might pay, if you went to spammy or semi-spammy grey hat link building agencies, $500 to $1,000 for a good quality backlink. So that has a tangible money value, and it obviously has a result of increased credibility, links, traffic, SEO. They're also writing for real readers. They're not writing for SEO. They're not writing for the algorithm. They created diverse informational content designed for specific audiences. And some of these are dealing with multiple audiences, B2B and B2C audiences at the same time. Some of them are specific to one or the other. But they're writing with the reader in mind. Now, everything I've just said is true of thought leadership in any field, but these leaders of the pack particularly demonstrated in the health and life sciences sector. Okay, so why does all this matter? Well, I've talked a little bit about the value of backlinks, but they were generating traffic that was worth 6 figures a month, $100,000 a month, if you were to translate the organic SEO traffic that they got. If you had to buy that traffic using Google AdWords for the same keywords, it would cost this much money. So you can actually put a tangible value to thought leadership content in terms of the traffic it delivers, setting aside all the value that it adds in terms of credibility and buyer's journey and understanding in sales support, sales collateral, and all those other things. There's a way of measuring the value of this. Similarly, and I think this is increasingly important, they also averaged more than 4,500 Google AI citations using the tools that we use to evaluate this. And typically when we look at a website as part of, say, a marketing strategy session or a marketing review, we might see numbers in the dozens or the low hundreds. So for these sites to be doing thousands, relatively speaking, it's phenomenal. And as you must know and experience in your own personal life now, zero-click search, ChatGPT, Google AI mode, this is where people are increasingly finding the answers to their questions. And if they're finding them and they're being referenced from your website because of your thought leadership, that's a tremendously powerful place. Okay, so it has meaningful business results for these companies. So let's dive into some of the practices that our thought leaders are using to achieve this. First of all, they're bringing their experts out. This expert authorship and expert editorial process, editing, content planning, and so on. This expertise is clearly differentiating the leaders. So there's some examples on this page. The top 20 performers out of our 450 or so sample put their experts front and center. So they were not relying on ChatGPT to make something up. They were out of information that already existed. They were not relying on, interns going and frantically searching PubMed for interesting stuff. They were bringing in the expertise of board certified doctors, clinical practitioners, specialists, analysts. It doesn't mean that those people have to do the planning, the writing, the editing, the upload, the imagery, all of that other stuff, a good marketing team, a good agency like Articulate can work with experts and draw out their expertise in a very time efficient way, through it, internal interviewing, through editing, through managing the process, so that there is a big difference between having expert input and making the experts do all the work. So some examples of this kind of thing. Everlywell uses board certified physicians and pharmacists, like nutritionists and therapists, to write their content, to input their content. Greenlight Guru has engineers author pieces on regulatory and technical topics. Simple Practice has some lay writers and some clinicians writing content. And when you're writing for an audience that is likely to be either very educated and technical because they are in a B2B market for health, tech and life sciences, doing some, they've gone through they're buying something on a sophisticated basis, or they're buying complex or medical products and services. But equally, you have to be expert if you're writing for consumers. There's an awful lot of misinformation out there. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. So this expertise also plays into Google's algorithm and internal human assessment. Google talks about EEAT, expertise, experience, authority, and trust, the kind of signs of good quality content that should be linked to and found. And clearly companies that do that and share that do better on SEO than companies that don't. So the second thing that they do, our leading thought leaders, is they bring scientific and editorial rigor to the process. So they are doing things to build trust and confidence in the reader. And this separates surface level content from genuine thought leadership, I think. I would say this, I'm probably not an expert in a lot of things, but I'm except in editorial rigor and process. So the strongest brands consistently back up their claims with well-cited research, peer-reviewed studies, robust editorial standards. They know what good quality data looks like, and they're bringing that out, and they're enriching it or sharing it or commentating on it or embedding it in their own material. So things like frequent reference to peer-reviewed journals, not hearsay and opinions, summaries of proprietary research that they've done that are made accessible with methodologies and explanations about how that data was developed. They're aligned with authority-backed frameworks or regulations, typically government regulations in that sort of world. They have transparent editorial processes. And I think a small thing, but an important sign of this is you see somebody's name and they've got their authorship, their byline is visible, and their credentials are visible. So misinformation in this sector, it has real consequences, right? People make clinical, financial, commercial decisions about it, and consumers, patients, make medical decisions in some cases based on this. So, you can't just sort of make it up as you go along. So this is not only writing scientific or technical or complicated material, but it's also doing it in a way that is, I don't like to use the word professional, but rigorous, considered, deliberate, well-structured, and things also like tone of voice guidelines and so on apply here. So the next thing that these thought leaders have, and it's probably more of a result or a consequence than a cause. Backlinks don't make good quality content, but good quality content helps create or justify backlinks, is that they have a large number of incoming links. They're cited widely. Their information is considered useful. So this is other sites linking to this. So they act as a credibility signal booster to search engines, and they strengthen authority and discoverability. And also they bring traffic, because if there's a link, people will click on it and come to your site. Interestingly, Mads research found that there was a relationship, but only a partial one, between the volume of backlinks and success. So it's not the sole factor. Your content still needs to work. You can't just, and that, I mean, if you are running a reasonably well-known or popular website, you're going to get emails almost on a daily basis from people saying, can we post something on your site? Can we get a backlink from your site? Because they want these backlinks. So there is a slightly dubious industry of people trying to get backlinks. Adding a load of backlinks to not thought leadership content isn't going to turn it into thought leadership content. But there is a kind of virtuous circle between good thought leadership and backlinks. We've seen a few cases, though, with companies that have lots of backlinks and high quality backlinks, but not actually great content or not great search engine organic traffic. So typically, for example, smaller startup companies with scientific innovation at their core might have a lot of high quality links from academic or healthcare organizations. They might be linked to by NHS trusts in the UK, for example, or universities, and those are really great high quality backlinks, but they haven't been able to translate that into traffic. So typically in that scenario, we would be looking to create the kind of content to build on that reputation and turn it into traffic. Sometimes companies have lots of great content, they don't have great backlinks, and in that scenario, typically it's because the content isn't being found or shared. So email, social media, coordinated PR, kind of to get the content out there for people is really important. Okay, two more things. The penultimate thing is we found, and this was something of a surprise, that publishing daily is not a prerequisite for thought leadership success. The standout brands actually had invested in depth, value, richness of the content over frequency and cadence. So, for example, Siemens Healthineers publish less often, but they publish globally relevant, richly referenced articles that carry weight. Withings, they make those sort of smart IoT scales and stuff. They use detailed customer stories that are not published very frequently, but they're very, very rich narrative stories. If they want mine, I've got a Withings smart scale. I got on it the other day and it said, will one of you two get off, please? So they can use that story if they want. It's an old joke, but it's still a good one. Search engines increasingly value quality, identify quality. If you read Google's search guideline, thank you, I appreciate that. I'm here all day, tip your waiters. Sorry, somebody gave me a little smiley, so I appreciate that. We live in a world of AI slop. There's a lot, quantity is easy now. It used to be a lot harder. So if I had a choice between doing something average and short once a week or doing something deep and meaningful once a month, I think I'd take the same budget, the same effort, and try and do something deep and meaningful once a month. We have a former client, I suppose now, who publishes one huge flagship report a year and gets huge amounts of press and attention and backlinks and engagement from it because they do a survey of their particular field. Once a year, if it's meaningful enough and impactful enough and well organized enough, can be thought leadership. So this is a liberating thing for content teams, right? You don't have to do something every day. Of course, if you're able to produce this kind of content more regularly, then you get the benefit of that. But start with quality and work towards quantity. Fewer, better assets that answer critical questions, reference credible sources, and showcase real expertise. This is where the gold is. And the last thing that these thought leaders are doing is they take a strong editorial stance. They have considered publishing strategies. They have good editing. They plan and brief carefully. They have good personas. They have good tone of voice guidelines. This sort of infrastructure of good quality writing. And in a sense, what they're doing is writing the magazine of them for their audience, and you would much rather be, depending on your choice, The Economist, Wired, The New Yorker of your field than, I don't know, a tabloid. Although tabloids ironically often have very good writers, not necessarily very ethical journalists. I used to write for Wired, and they used to fact check the hell out of everything you say. And that discipline is really good. That sort of rhythm and rigor of really good writing is important. Fundamental to this, though, and I've talked about this a lot in the past, is understanding your audience. So good thought leaders tune their content into the way that their buyers and stakeholders think, search, and make decisions. They avoid this man in the mirror problem, which we see very often with tech companies, and particularly tech startups or early stage, growth stage companies, where the principles are coming out of a scientific or a technical background. They think that if only they can communicate the technical benefits of their product, they can talk about their stuff in their language to their audience, they're bound to buy it. But in practice, that's not right. You've got to start by talking about your buyer's issues in your buyer's language before you earn the right to talk about your stuff in your language. And so people who, the buyer is not the person in the mirror. So this means translating complex technology, complex science, complex thinking into ideas and guidance and insights that can resonate and engage with the audience. They also, the strongest thought leaders in our survey, are covering a broader spectrum of topics. So they might be not only talking narrowly about their products and services in their language, but they might be talking about adjacent issues and problems and challenges. And this can be a way of capturing more SEO intent. It can be a way of capturing more engagement. But actually, it also gives a credibility platform. So they are translating their expertise into actionable guides or insights or explainers or checklists. They're not just sort of standing on a high horse opinionating about everything all the time. They're trying to help. Always be helping is a good starting point for content. And they're using clear, accessible, non-clickbaity language for headlines and subheadlines. They're trying to two approaches to developing software-enabled medical devices is an example of what I'm talking about there. Now, that might sound a little bit prosaic, but it's clear, descriptive, upfront, honest with the reader. You know what you're going to get. My old editor, Matthew Rock, back in the long ago when I was editor at large at Real Business, he used to say to me, you have to earn the reader's trust with the title, with the stand first, with the first sentence, the first paragraph. And if you start playing games with them and you're trying to trying to baffle brains with BS, you can lose trust. And when you're talking about expertise and authority, you're not really interested so much in psychological manipulation as clarity of communication. So this is something that we detected across the best of breed in this sector. So there you have it. Our recommendations drawn from the data that we analysed. I've got a few quick reminders for people. A couple of people came in a little bit later. Do download the full report. It's got a lot more depth to it and insights. Do have a look at our webinars, articulatemarketing.com/webinars, and please drop me an email. If you email me off the back of this and you remind me, I'll tell you another stupid joke about Internet of Things devices. You can book up a meeting with me. I'd be happy to look at your content, your website, articulatemarketing.com/meet. That's my live calendar. You can book something up there. Matthew@articulatemarketing is my email. That brings us to the end of today's webinar. Thank you very much indeed. I really appreciate you coming along. Have a fantastic afternoon, day, evening. But for now, that's it. Thank you.